Hello and welcome to UpperPen. My name is Dakota, and I try to post an interview with an author, narrator, or artist at least once a week. Sometimes I don't always make it, but I try. So if you like these interviews, please subscribe or follow and let me know what you like about them and what you'd like to see more of. It doesn't just help me, it helps the people that are on here to kind of promote their work. And I really love their work, clearly, otherwise I wouldn't talk to them. So please help us all out. Today's guest, though, doesn't really need our help because Frances White is doing very well. Her book, The Bone Door, released earlier in May, I believe, and it seems to be doing very, very well. So thank you so much for being here.
That's good to know because sometimes it's hard to tell when you're in your own little book bubble. It's nice to know, but I can always use more help. So thank you for having me.
For folks who don't yet know, what is The Bone Door?
So the Bone Door I describe as a fantasy horror escape room novel. It's about a 11-year-old boy called Hop who wakes up in a strange, creepy labyrinth with no memory of who he is or why he's been put there. And he has been told that in order to escape, he needs to find the bone door. But the bone door lies behind a series of locked rooms. And in each locked room, he's transported to a different realm where he has to solve an impossible task to make it through.
It it has a lot of myth to it too. It feels like you pulled on quite a lot of mythology for this one.
Yeah, there's actually there's a little sprinkling of Irish mythology in there. Not everybody realizes that, but especially in the first room, there's lots of figures from Irish mythology woven in, as well as then I sort of divert into my own mythology. So it's sort of inspired by, I wouldn't call it like a strictly accurate Irish mythology, but it's definitely drawing from that and then expanding on it.
It feels like a story that someone would have told though, like forever ago. So like kudos.
Oh.
That's like difficult to do in my opinion.
Yeah, that was kind of the aim because I wanted it to feel like an aeons long story, which I mean, hopefully when people reading it don't feel like they're reading for aeons, but hopefully the depth of it feels like it's lived in.
Um, so you mentioned that Hop is the main character and he is an 11-year-old boy. At least he's pretty sure he's a boy.
Yeah.
You have these really funny moments where the characters, because they don't have memory, they kind of make assumptions about themselves and then they're like, yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to write a character without any memory, especially when you're writing like a secondary world fantasy. So it's not a world that we know, and it's not a world that is easily explained. And also, we're not even in that world. We're in a labyrinth connected to that world. Who knows what it is? And so yeah, with the memories, I decided to give them like little tidbits, but it was more about them personally. So he wakes up and he does remember like I really know things about plants for some reason, and I feel really excited about plants. Doesn't really tell you much about who he is or where he's from, but it at least lets us build a bit of a character for him, so he's not just a completely blank slate.
But you also have Amber, Scully, Little, and a host of other characters that we meet. So if you don't have backstories for them immediately in the book, did you have them in your mind when you were writing?
So to a degree, like writing this story was a bit like putting my own puzzle together because I had the idea of someone waking up in this weird place and not knowing who they were. And so I had to kind of work it out alongside the main character. I'm a bit of a plotter to a certain degree, but then I hit a brick wall and have to write it out. So I had like the basic ideas planned of who they were and where they came from. But then once I started writing, some of those things ended up changing and twisting around.
Um, so the room that they first wake up in, the entrance, as the owl character calls it,
Yeah.
um, you do something, I think, that kind of sets the tone for the whole book. Amber is terrified of spiders. And what do you do?
The room filled with spiders. I know. That's like a for a first chapter, that is like in the deep end. So but you want to encapsulate the theme of the book in the first chapter, and I feel like it sets up what you can expect. Not that the whole book is filled with spiders. I mean, there is one other spider in the book, uh, but, but in general, I wanted to. Like, we have like a sweet boy waking up and making friends with a skull, but then something really dark and horrible on the other end. So that's kind of the book summed up. Lots of light, happy characters, and then horrible situations.
So it does kind of tell the reader what to expect, though. And I feel like first chapters should do this at the very least. And I think yours does it really well because we get the tone, which is heartfelt but funny and also kind of scary and unknown. But then we get the horrible spider moments with the sea of spiders going into people's mouths and up their backs and awful awfulness.
Yeah, and I also like the first chapter to sort of like by the end of the first chapter, I feel like you should know who the main character is, like generally in their persona, and are you on board? And like having him drowned in literal spiders and still be like, oh, I hope I'm not crushing them as I walk by. It's pretty much hop summed up.
I do love that he's so uh, consciously optimistic, right? So he actively is trying to be optimistic at all times. And I think people just think you are optimistic or you're not. Um, so is that like a kind something you wanted to touch on in the book?
Um, yeah, that's very much hop summed up. I think so when I first came up with the concept, I was like, who's the most interesting character to put in this very dark, horrible situation. I was like, what about a very sweet, naive, and optimistic little boy? That makes me sound evil, but generally, I wanted to see how someone who is so determined to always look on the bright side and always find the good in any situation would deal with being confronted with like so many horrible things. And yes, it was deliberate that it actually doesn't come naturally to him. He has to work at it. He like repeats his mantra, find the good. He's like, he occasionally has bad thoughts and he's like, no, 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 go away, bad thoughts. Like part of his reason for wanting to get out of the labyrinth is because he is getting flickers of memories and these are bad memories. So rather than like trying to find these memories, he's like, no, I want to try and get away from them. So that was a different angle that I liked to like a memory loss story because it's not one you often see where they're trying to escape the memories.
Yeah, a lot of times when they wake up with no memory, it's like, who am I? How do I find out who I am?
Yeah. And he's like, no, I don't want to know.
His companions are like, no, we need to know who we are. But like, he's like, nah, man.
Even then with him are like, you're a little bit different from us. Do you not find that like a bit, unusual? And he's like, oh, I don't want to think about that. I just want to be one of you guys.
The mantra that he has is what fear is bad, see, find
Yeah,
the good or
kind of
something.
good. Yeah.
And it reminds me a lot of the Dune, fear is the mind killer.
You know what? I've never read Dune or watched it, so I can't say I copied.
No, but it's like such a common, I think it's like a kind of normal thing to say, right? So nobody wants to be afraid.
Mhm.
And I think that it transcends people, right? So I don't think you copied.
Yeah, but at the same time, I kind of wanted it to be as we go on, we realize that fear isn't always the worst thing. Like he meets Bear, for example, who's afraid of everything and is always fearful. But the fact that he does stuff in spite of that kind of inspires Hop to think that he might be like the bravest person he's ever met.
I do like that. But the major theme, as written in the foreword, you tell us right in the foreword what the theme of the book is going to be.
Mhm.
And it is PTSD and kind of getting over trauma.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about Why did you tell us right off the bat what it was and why trauma?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I actually wrote in the foreword now because I mention. Oh yes, I did. Yeah, it's right there. This book is a book about confronting coming to terms with and overcoming trauma. Well, in terms of the foreword, like the actual, it's little author's note at the beginning. It was because the book is a heavy book and it deals with lots of very heavy themes that some people will find confronting and not necessarily want to read about. And I wanted them to be forewarned, but I didn't want to do like a list of content warnings. So you sometimes see this in books where you open it, it goes, it contains all these things, and the list for this book would be absolutely horrific. And I think it would be scary. I think it would put across the wrong idea of what the book is. Like if I saw that list, I'd be like, no thanks. But I wanted to sort of have the option there. So I've got a list on my website if people actually want to know the specific things, but I wanted them to know that I'm trying to deal with it in a sort of sympathetic way. So it's not just about, what do you sort of like in a lot of fantasy books, there is these horrible traumatic scenes and they're sort of glossed over and moved by. But this book, that it's about dealing with that and the journey of learning how to live with trauma, if not overcoming it, and how it can have different effects on different people. And I think it's good to warn people, especially with some of the themes. I wouldn't want to like trigger anyone or anything like that.
When you came up with the idea of someone waking up alone and with no memory, did you always kind of think you were going to focus on trauma and kind of overcoming it?
Not at all. Not in the slightest. In fact, like I'm not really a themey writer. I know some writers are like, I want to write a book about this particular theme. I'm more of like a plot writer, so I thought of the plot first, and I wrote the whole first draft before I was like, oh wait, this book's about trauma. It sort of all clicked together after the first draft. I was like, oh yeah, all of them have got their own individual trauma responses and how they're confronting it in different ways. And after then, that's when I was like, okay, now I know what it's about. I can lean into it more. So with like further edits, I kind of like pared it down, but it definitely was not my intention. I sort of discovered it as I wrote the story.
I think it's really interestingly dealt with, like how these kids deal with trauma because they all do it differently. Like Little always runs away and hides, and then Hop is always trying to be very optimistic and let's go poke the danger.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see these types of trauma response play out on the page.
Yeah, I wanted to show there was all different ways of dealing with it, and not one way is necessarily right, especially with like Hop and Thistle, who is his exact opposite. So Hop is like, don't look at the bad thing, don't even think about the trauma, it didn't happen. Whereas Thistle's like, I cannot look away from it, that's all I can see. He basically cloaks himself in it. And I wanted to see how these two boys with their two different interactions would, two different responses to trauma would interact with each other. Um, yeah. I'm saying trauma a lot. Yeah.
Well, it's not just about trauma though. It feels like finding friendship really and like how we work as a community is big parts of it too.
Yeah, I think that works into the theme in a way because I think that's one of the main ways a lot of people deal with really tough situations in their life is to find support and hope through other people. And that's what I wanted to give these characters a kind of found family vibe, building each other up and supporting each other.
One of the things that people might not expect right away too is you have children in this book. Most of the characters are children, but you do some awful things to them. So, so Amber, who Hop wakes up with, has no eyes, if I'm not mistaken, and then
Yes.
no tongue, no legs.
Yeah, not just all Amber, all the different
Yeah,
characters
yeah,
and
yeah. Sorry.
body parts. Yeah. Or I would just do that to one character, that would be horrendous. Just the one body part
She
per
she
child.
gets all of it.
Yeah, I mean that's. that was a part of the plot that was in from the beginning, that was part of the mystery, and I actually didn't really know why that was a thing, but I liked the thread that it pulled at to wonder why these children have been dismembered. Oh God, this is going to put off so many people. The book is a hopeful book. I hope. I hope it gives people good feelings by the end, but this is, yeah, it's a very visual representation that something major has happened to these characters that we need to unravel.
Um, and I think the thing that I find the most interesting is other authors tend to shy away from doing like damage to children, right? So children either die or they leave. They don't really get
Mm.
damaged permanently. But you kind of lean into it here as a like, here's a representation of trauma.
Mhm.
Um, was it weird doing these things to kids, or like did you just not even think about it?
I did enjoy it, if that's
Right,
okay to
right.
say. But so in a previous job that I was in, I had interaction with lots of children in children's homes who had gone through
Mm.
a lot of trauma. And so I know that it's not just something that people don't like to look at it or acknowledge it, or it's in other books, like you say, the children gets killed and that's it, it's just the end, or something happens to them, we don't see it again. And that's not how reality works, especially our world. Children are often the people to like suffer the most and like immediately from bad stuff happening. And so it's not something that I wanted to gloss over. I wanted to draw attention to it, how this is happening, and it's not necessarily like it is something you can live with and grow and become a fully fledged human, but it's also something we have to acknowledge and deal with because it's not something we can just look away from. That's the main point of the book, really, because Hop is someone who's always trying to look away from it, but it's not something that you can just pretend it isn't there and it's not happening.
And Hop is the only one who's not physically, like outwardly marred, right? So that's also another point of like, why?
Yeah, I love like putting in loads of little questions into my books that are there from the beginning and you don't really know why. Like, especially if you put like one really strange thing, like I guess with like, this book, that's one of them. Like, why is he the only one not? And the whole time, even when you're discovering other things, you're like, but why not him? Like, it carries on right to the end. I like a little mystery like that. And then when it clicks, you're like, oh God, that's why.
Well, it also has to help that like you did have their memories gone because the book is written in close third to Hop. So like you're getting his inner dialogue, and if he knows, then
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My first book was first person, but this one was third person because I thought first person in Hop's voice might be too much for anyone.
it well, so I think it goes back to feeling like an older story though, because I think this is how children's books used to be written in like Europe. This was just
Yeah,
a common way to write children's stories. So I really like how it's written.
thank you.
Um, so the kids are tasked with doing some impossible things. The first one of which is getting a golden egg. Um, how did you come up with these tasks for them?
Yeah, so I wanted them to be exciting to read about. So like fun, first of all, something that was fun to do. It wasn't just, can you clean the street? I wanted it to feel some of them insurmountable. Like I think we're okay to say the second one is like Bring Me the Moon,
Yeah.
which is what the heck does that mean? But also weave into the plot in the way that I needed it to. So there's sort of we're doing three functions: fun to read, um, wondering how on earth they're going to do it, but also I can link it into the plot, especially as it goes on, the missions get more and more related to the underlying plot that's going on. But especially with the first one, the Fetch the Golden Egg, I really wanted the first room to feel like more of a traditional quest, epic fantasy, where they're just traveling to a dragon and that kind of vibe, and then we pull that all apart as the book goes on.
Because they have no idea what the golden egg is when they first arrive, at least Hop and his little group. And then they get told by Storm and
Stunning.
uh yeah. And they're like, "Oh, great. Great. We're gonna go steal from the dragon."
Yeah, that was like quite. I had to work out a way that they would know as well because they don't. There's a very big issue that I set myself in this book where only Hop speaks the language that people speak. Another weird thing that we have to read to find out why, but became challenging as we went on. So that was something I had to weave around with the other characters.
Um, so you brought up that Hop knows languages that other people don't, but he's also seeing things that other people aren't.
And hearing things, yeah.
Which is so like spooky, right? Because he's the one leading this group. And if you see someone talking to themselves, I'm not sure I'd follow that person.
I think this links into them being children, and that's an advantage because I think children would be less put off by it being like, okay, that's just, that's just as imagined. They kind of take it in their stride because Hop is so likable anyway, because he's so kind to them, and I think children value quite kindness quite highly, maybe in a way that a lot of adults don't. So I think that draws them in, and they're like, okay, at least he's not hurting anyone with his random talking to people. Especially because, well, especially the twins are the first ones they meet and they're quite strange anyway, so they're like, sure. I mean, the twins tried to eat Hop when they first meet him, so him talking to a random voice isn't that strange.
I like that they call him Rabbit too a lot. Because
There's
they
lots
always
of
talk,
rabbits and bunnies and things.
it's just funny. But there's one kind of character that Hop is seeing that is kind of like dictating how he's reacting to the world. But without giving a lot away, can you tell us who that is or like what's going on there?
Are you talking about the Shadow Man?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, see, the Shadow Man or Scully, because the two of them are kind of.
Scully doesn't give much away, I think, at least too much.
Yeah, I feel like so the Shadow Man is basically a mysterious, shadowy figure that Hop hears and occasionally sees that just says really horrible things and seems to know more about why Hop's there, and only he sees him. And I guess he has the function of kind of we're mostly in Hop's head and it's so good and everything's fine, but we have this actual physical voice and person who is hinting into the darkness that is kind of inescapable. Hop thinks that he can escape this voice, but it's following him everywhere. Sort of a representation of his memories, I guess, in a way.
I think everybody who's had like very domineering parents might understand this as an adult.
Yeah, yeah, that voice that is always there, always maybe if you had not so supportive parents,
Yeah.
because he's not being very supportive of Hop really. Whereas we've got Scully on the other hand, who's like I imagine them as like the devil and like the angel on his shoulder. So Scully is way more like, you've got this, you can do this. Also, be careful, don't go up to the monster and say hi. He mainly like, ignores Scully's warnings, but Scully's heart is in the right place.
I really love the first scene where they meet. It's like the first scene in the book, I think, because
Yeah.
Skull, what is it? Hop wakes up and then he sees Scully and Scully twists his head off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Hop shakes like the shoulder because it's like a full skeleton.
Yeah.
Shakes the shoulder, it sort of like rolls off, and he's like, "Oh, you dislocated your head from your body," and then they're just friends from there. But I
Feels
always
like a
had that image.
kidnapping.
Yeah, I always had that image from the beginning of like a talking skull being there. I think I had the talking skull before I had Hop or any of the story. I was just like, I just want there to be a talking skull.
I want to say this is the third book within like a year that I've read that has a talking skull, and I really dig this aesthetic.
I read another one that had a talking skull. I was like, is this some kind of weird trope that's a talking skull trope? If so, I'm here for it, definitely.
Yeah, I want one of those like drugstore skulls that talk and sing or whatever to be to be my little friend. Um, so as the story progresses, we get to know the owl character, who's the only one who actually knows what's going on.
Yes,
Um, so, ha
Dolores.
yeah, how did we meet her and what is she doing for the story?
So she was actually, compared to Scully, as one of the first characters, she's one of the last characters that I actually created for it. Because for a while in my brain, they were just sort of wandering around the labyrinth, working out as they went. But because the book is already quite disorientating to begin with, I was like, I think we need like somebody here to sort of tell them the rules and guide them and be a little bit of a caretaker.
Mhm.
So then I created this um basically 6 foot owl, talking owl who wears clothes and knows all the mysteries of the universe, who's basically caretaking the labyrinth for her unnamed master that is the one who tells Hob exactly how what he's got to do to get out of it. And I think it just gives us it roots us a bit in the story so we're not just wandering around in complete confusion. But she's a really fun character to write because she's basically just a prickly old woman, but she also like cares for them a bit. And she gives them a safe room between the rooms because the rooms are quite horrible. So then we get like a breather and some cookies and like, have a nice bath and have a nice sleep and then off into more trauma.
So those moments though are very helpful because the book is quite dark, but you get these moments where they come back and they kind of reset, it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, I called it the respite room to sort of I feel like the reader needed it as much as I did while writing. It's just nice to take a breath. And also I play a lot of video games and it kind of reminded me of like a safe room, you know, when you're
Yeah.
going through and you find one and it's at the end, you're like, yes, I can breathe.
I like that it isn't just a typical like maze either. You're not just putting these kids in like a random walled area. The rooms are worlds, it feels like.
Yeah, I did consider making it more like a maze. For ages, I had in my brain that it was sort of like layers and they would go up from one layer and go down or go up or something, and it was an actual. But then once I thought of the idea of because each room just started to feel a bit samey, kind of like if we just want it to all be in the same area. But I thought, you're writing fantasy. You can have whatever you want as long as the logic works in the world. So that's when I thought of the having it all be completely different realms, which was really fun to play with. And I had about like 7 rooms to begin with, but then I had to
Seven.
down.
How did you pare them down then?
Oh God. A lot of plotting, a lot of plotting and being brutal, but I got it down to 4, which I think is enough in the end. In my brain, it was like they were going to be shorter, but then once you start writing, you're like, oh God, I'm like a third through the book and I'm only in room 1. That I realized I'd have to try to combine stuff within the rooms and pair stuff back a bit.
It feels like the space that you give each room is pretty equal in the book. I think I looked at it and they're relatively similar page
Yeah.
lengths. Um, which is odd because a lot of people would put either a lot of emphasis on the first room or very little, and then you'd spread it out further and further, you know? So why did you keep them kind of similarly lengthed?
I would love to say that's deliberate. I feel like that was just me getting lucky in the way that maybe the way that I write, because each room is sort of like a mini story. So you sort of have
Yeah.
to have, yeah, the beginning bit and then them getting to the middle and something changes and then the end. And maybe I'm pretty good with like keeping most of my novels vaguely the same length. So maybe that was like that on a smaller scale, but it wasn't on purpose. I wasn't like they all should be equal length, but I'm glad that they are.
It's unique though, like, because a lot of stories do kind of just gloss over some of the middle sections of like places you have to get out of or something.
Mm. Mm.
So it's
Well, I knew that
interesting.
each room was gonna have to be really important because each one has so much important information that it needs to put across. I did think the third room might be the longest because I had so much in my brain for that, but I think I managed to, yeah, obviously somehow get it down, so that's good.
I take it there was a lot of editing with this book.
Yeah, is that coming across? That was a lot. It's the most like editing work I've ever done in my life. It was the hardest book to write. Um, Yeah, because there's just so many challenges. Like writing young characters in an adult book is a challenge to begin with, and getting the tone right, and the memory loss, and
Mhm.
the world that we're in. So it was juggling 1,000 different really tricky things at once. So I did yeah a lot of edits.
It does feel like an adult book, even though the characters are younger. So, was there push to try and make it a young adult book at all?
No, because so the way publishing works is like I already had a contract for an adult book, so it was going to be
Ah.
an adult book either way. The more push that I had was to make the characters older, actually.
Oh.
And I made one character older. This was my compromise. I was like, I'll make one of them older. So I aged up Amber actually. She was originally like 12 and I think she's 14 now
Yeah.
or 15. So that was my compromise. But the rest, I understand why, because obviously them being young children for some people will be a big nope. But for me, I was like, I think we lose a lot if Hop is like 17.
Yeah.
His character would just be completely different, and I think quite annoying. I think he gets away with how he is because he's 11 and you can just about buy how naive he is. If he was 17, you'd be like, come on, man, get it together.
I feel like you might fall into the trap of like the if he was older, like, oh, clearly a man is supposed to be helping these kids, like we're
Mm. Well, I think they wanted them all to be older. I think that was the idea, but
oh.
I just thought I'm quite good with accepting edits, and my editor's very good and very smart. But just that one, I knew it was wrong because I was like, I can't picture how the story would be if that was the case, and I like mulled over it for weeks. I was like, I just cannot see the story, and she was like, fair enough. So she let me she let me keep him, so she didn't push it, which is good, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm always glad when there's like nice like editors that work well with the authors because clearly this seems to have done well for the book.
Yeah, fingers crossed. They always want the best for the book. Obviously, that's why they're the editor. They're not going to make changes to make it worse. And I totally understood that point of view. But for this book, it didn't work, I don't think. Not for the one I wanted to tell.
Um, is this the same world as Voyage of the Damned?
No.
Not even kind of. Okay.
No, there's like a couple of little fun Easter eggs that I put in the book that if you've read Voyage a lot, or you might recognize, just little. Well, no, to be fair, Dolores in it, she knows all the possible realities and all the cosmos, so she probably knows about Voyage the Damned. So let's see, it's some like multi-universe.
That's what it feels like is there's like this plane of existence and then everything else is kind of just like they're visiting these different worlds in
Yeah.
the rooms. And I was like, oh, maybe there's a Voyage of the Damned room and that's why they're stuck there.
Yeah, maybe Voyage the Damned just takes place in the Labyrinth. Maybe that's the meta story. That's one of the Labyrinth rooms.
Oh. Um, so the book does, it's really hopeful. Um, and is it difficult to balance the hope and the kind of like horror? Like at one point they're stabbing sacrifices on tree stumps and not the
Mm.
kids, but like
In a way, yes, and in a way, no, because I sometimes feel like the darker you go, the more the hope becomes kind of obvious and clear. The contrast is there so much more if you have all these horrible stuff and then you have this really light, hopeful character. There was a few bits that had to be like pared back a bit because I had gone too dark. It's hard to know when you're writing, and my term agent were like, maybe just take that bit out. So I pulled back a bit because I didn't want to, absolutely traumatize everybody. But I think with Hop as a main character, once I understood the character, it took a while to get into his mindset because I'm not really like him. I'm more pessimistic. So once I understood his mindset and his approach to the world, then the hope became easier to find in it.
I it's funny that you say you're more pessimistic because I feel like I am too. Like I want to expect the bad and hope for the good.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like I don't know. I think a lot of us have like a defensive thing, being like, I will expect the worst, so then I'm not disappointed. Whereas Hop's like, just expect the good, and it will probably happen, which is. a good lesson, I guess. I wish I could be more like that.
It's
Mm.
a fun tension between him and some of the other characters, though, because they're like, why? Why are you like this? Shut up.
Yeah, they don't really understand, and to be fair, that's another part of the mystery why he's like that, and none of the other characters are. And you will find out by the end of the book why he's like that. There's even an answer to his strange personality.
So you clearly had an arc for the book, and then it seems like you had arcs in the individual rooms themselves as well.
Yeah.
Um, did you kind of just write those as like short stories then?
In my head, that's kind of how I saw them. I wanted each room to have a kind of mini arc of a main overarching story. Yeah, kind of like a short story in each one, but also they had to, so they would feel satisfying as like a little standalone thing, but also then they all have to feed into the main story. So
Hmm.
that was just, I don't know why I did that to myself. That was really hard. And I'm not a short story writer at all, so I was like, I really have to condense this down and strip it down to, the bare basics of what is needed in each room. And we're also meeting characters, new characters in basically every room, except maybe oh no, last one we do as well. Yeah, we meet new characters in every room, so to do that over and over again is, yeah, it's a lot of work.
But it's also so many characters to carry through. Like that's got to be a lot of managing who gets to be front and center.
Yeah, it was, and like in my drafts, like different characters had like way more than they ended up having, but obviously when you have a big cast, you kind of have to manage it. But I did like for the main like seven of them, I did a separate complete edit of the manuscript for each one. So I would just because I can't like focus on too many things, especially with this book. So I like did a whole edit where I was just thinking about Amber and how Amber would react to the scene and would she say something here if it was, would she react to this? And then I went through all the different characters. So I hope that even if they're not at the forefront in that moment, they still feel present in the book.
It is amazing that you keep them present at all, because like that's so many. I would forget about one, I'm sure.
The thing is, because I went from Voyage, which had 12 characters on the
True.
boat, to go to seven, I was like, this is actually much more manageable. Although in Voyage, they keep dying off one by one, so my numbers got smaller. In this, we've got them pretty much the whole way. So,
Yeah. Um, so the book does finish and it has a good ending. So I take it there will not be a sequel.
there is no sequel planned for it. Voyage is standalone, The Bone Doors is standalone, and I have a third book sold, not out yet, hopefully out
Oh.
next year. That was also a standalone, not a sequel to either of those.
Are you allowed to talk about it yet?
I'm not sure, but I'll just say the pitch anyway, because that'll stop me. No, I think I can give you a very sneaky pitch, but
Okay.
I call it, I pitch it as Gay Bridgerton meets Squid Game.
Oh, I'm down.
And I kind of put it in the middle of like Voyage and The Bone Door in terms of like how dark or light-hearted it is. It's sort of, it's not as dark as The Bone Door, it's not as light-hearted as Voyage, kind of in the middle.
Um, so is that already done then, or are you working on it right now?
So I've written a draft of it, which is with my editor, so she'll be reading it and feeding back. So hopefully very soon, I think she said June, and then I'll find out if I've
Ooh.
done okay or not. But it was a lot of fun to write, and especially after the Bone Door was much easier to write. Because I have characters who have memories, which is amazing when writing a fantasy book, because you can just, they can just tell you about the world. It was much more of a easy process.
Do you have anything planned after that, or is that kind of where you're at right now?
Yeah, I do have more planned, but I definitely can't talk about those. But trust me, I have lots planned in multiple avenues and multiple genres. I love like mixing genres, so yeah, expect more of that. I don't really stay in a box.
So it does feel like each of the stories that I've read, the Bone Door and the Voyage of the Damned, they have these mysteries at the heart of them, though.
Mhm.
Does that kind of jive with the rest of how
Yeah,
you write?
The funny thing is, I never really thought of myself as a mystery writer ever, especially when I wrote The Bone Door. I was like, I'm not writing another murder mystery. I'm done. And I guess it wasn't a murder mystery, but it basically is a mystery because we're in uncovering secrets and
Yeah.
things we don't know. And I have found that is kind of throughout all my books. Maybe the next one, not so much, but another one that I'm planning is basically a mystery, a disappearance mystery again, so I can't stay away from them. I think it's because I'm obsessed with like true crime and stuff like that, that it's just there's something so engaging about wanting to know. Maybe it's like the curiosity in me to try and find out what's going on.
Well, I think there's really only a few types of stories, and mystery is a good way to drive plot. So, like, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, especially as like a quite, like I said, I'm quite a plotty foremost writer, so having that mystery for me to kind of pursue as well. Maybe always wanted to be a detective, and now I'm just living out in my books.
I love that your books are so charactery, though. There's so many characters. I don't know. I just love that about them.
Oh, thank you. No, that's something I've always creating characters and like writing characters is actually my favorite thing to do. And I love making them a little bit larger than life initially, but then actually quite human once you crack open the shell. Um, so yeah, I had a lot of fun writing both of the main characters in these books.
Um, so is there anywhere that folks can buy like signed copies of your books? I know you're not in the US, right?
There isn't any signed ones in the US, but the ones that we have are the first US ones are the special edition. So all the first printing have these beautiful edges and it's beautiful end papers. They're not signed, but if you want a signed one, the only place you can get them at the moment is Goldsboro Books. So that's Golds, Boro. There's very limited edition, but they're really pretty. They've got like a beautiful key on the edge, and I signed all of those and stamped them with a Scully stamp.
That's cool.
But
Is
yeah, if
that
you
like
want to know, I would act quickly because there was only like 500 or something. So
that's still so many to sign though? Like I feel like I would get arthritis.
yeah, it was a lot because I did it all in one go as well, and I was like, oh God. Especially with the stamp. The stamp was harder than the signing because it was like pressing on me.
Um, and for folks who might want to keep following your writing, is there somewhere that they can do that on a website or social media?
The main one I use is Instagram, and I'm Frances White author on there. And if you search probably Frances White author, my website will come up as well, and I have a newsletter, so you can always sign up for that because I try to keep it reasonably updated.
That's impressive because a lot of like full-time authors, they try, but like it's maybe once a year you get a newsletter.
Yeah, when I say reasonably, maybe like once every like 3 months.
Okay, that makes more sense.
It's not like every week or anything. I feel like I can only do it when I've got big news. I don't want to keep doing it for no reason. So
Yeah, that's fair. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
thank you for having me.
I really, really love The Bone Door, and it is out now, so if anybody wants to try reading it, I would suggest going to get a copy or stop by a library and grab it.
Yeah.
Um, and let me know what you guys think of it. I think it's got dark moments, but it's not overly dark, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I worried that like a bit of this interview might sound like the book is like really depressing. Most people who read it have gone, I'll send you my therapy bill, but also I'm feeling all the happy emotions by the end and I want to reread it. So it's a hard journey, but by the end, hopefully people forgive me.
I think it's a beautiful journey, though, so.
Yeah, sometimes the hardest journeys are the ones that are most rewarding, which is what the book is about. So
Well, thank you again.
thank you.
And I hope everybody out there goes and gets the book and has a lovely, lovely day. Bye.
Bye.